Hello and welcome back to my channel. My name is Charlene and today we're going to be doing a little bit different video. I'm going to be talking about our plans for the 2024-25 homeschool year. So I know with this being a booktube channel, a lot of you are not going to be here for homeschool content. So I don't plan to put out a lot of homeschool videos. I'm thinking 2, maybe 3 a year. This one to talk about what we're going to be doing in our homeschool year. One at the end of the year to talk about what we used, what we changed, what didn't work, and what did work. And possibly one in the middle of the year to talk about what we're changing for the second semester. But that's all I'm planning to put on here. So if you're not interested in the homeschool content, there's not going to be a ton of it. But I do at least want to talk a little bit about what we're planning for the homeschool year, just because it's a really big part of our lives. It just takes up a lot of our time. It's a big factor in how our lives work, how our family works throughout the school year. So I'm planning to talk about the main subjects that we are doing and then talk a little bit about the more elective subjects that we're going to be doing. But I'm not going to be going as in depth on those. And I'm mostly just going to be sharing the curriculum that we're going to be using. Hopefully it all works. Some of it feels more tried and true than others, but we'll see how it all goes this year. My kids this year are going to be in 1st and 2nd grade, so this is all lower elementary stuff. But yeah, let's just go ahead and get into it. So the main subjects that we do each year are math, language arts with both reading and writing, Bible, science, and social studies. We also do some electives. Last year we did American Sign Language, and we did some typing, we did some music. This year, some of them are staying the same, some of them are changing, or I'm changing how long we're doing them. But let's just start with the core subjects, and specifically the ones that are different per child, which are math and language arts. So math with my son, who is the oldest, is a lot more tried and true. We started him on this math program when he was in kindergarten because we started with master books math. He finished the kindergarten book in a semester, and so I started him on a grade 1 book with a different company, and he has done really well with it. So I'm pretty confident that this is the brand we're going to stick with, or the company we're going to stick with for math for him, and that is Apologia, and he is in the grade 2 book. He's about 6 months or a semester ahead as far as the grade level in Apologia. He started the grade 1 book in January of his kindergarten year, and he finished it in either January or February of this year and started on grade 2. So we will be using grade 2 through the first semester, probably partway into the second semester, and I'm assuming in the second semester we will start on grade 3. But we have really enjoyed this book because every lesson, I'll try to find pages where he hasn't done stuff, or I should say most lessons, there is some kind of activity for them to do at the beginning, and then it has the practice work. And some of it he does find to be busy work because he gets math pretty easily, but he seems to do really well with this book. So we're just going to keep using Apologia, and hopefully it continues to work for him. My daughter, we started her on LifePack last year, and it was not working. It started in on addition and subtraction way too early for her. She was not ready for it. So in the spring semester, or the second semester, we started on Apologia grade 1. She was doing well with it until we started getting further into the addition and subtraction. The early stuff she did okay. As we got further in, she was struggling a bit. And I don't think it was necessarily with understanding it so much as just having a desire to actually figure it out. So we kind of paused early on this last year. We stopped a few weeks early, let her take a break from it. We will start on this again in the fall. And I'm hoping it's just a matter of she just didn't feel ready for it or just wasn't comfortable enough with it yet. I'm hoping Apologia works for her because I'd like to just have one company I can buy it from. Also, more than anything, I would just like to know I have something that works for my kids. So I already have this one. If this works for her, we can just keep using it instead of trying another company and hoping we find something else that works. But we'll see how this goes next year. The next subject is language arts. And currently my kids are working out of the same level book, but they're at different places in the book because my son started on it earlier than my daughter did. Neither one of them started this at the beginning of the school year. My son started this in the I'll just go ahead and show you what the book is before I go any further into that. It's Language Lessons for a Living Education by Master Books. And my son, we had one curriculum for him last year, and it was not working for me. Sorry, you probably prefer not to have the glare. It was working fine for him. He was understanding what he needed to learn, but there were things about it that were not working for me at all. And so we ended up switching over to this one, and he's done really well with this one too. My daughter started on Foundations Phonics by them in the beginning of the semester, and she finished it really fast and started on this book. She's not very far into it, while my son is over halfway through. So we will be finishing level 1 up for him in the first semester, and I think somewhere around 6 to 8 weeks into the next semester, we should be switching over to the grade 2 book. My daughter, however, will probably be doing this through at least the first semester. I don't know for sure if we would need to go into the second semester. I don't think we will, but we'll see. We do just a slightly shorter school year than the normal 36 weeks. So it might take us the full first semester. It might not. So she might be starting grade 2 language arts in the second semester, depending on how well she does with this. But we'll see how this goes first. And this one is fairly, I almost hate to call it repetitive, but it does have a formula for it. It does come with a couple other books that you can read to your kids. I was doing that with my son, but he was not clicking with the books that he was supposed to read. So we just started reading one of his books. He has a couple graphic novel books. We just started working on one of those and reading that for his reading in this book. And that he did really well with. So we have had to change a little bit of it. But they do learn spelling words. They learn nouns, adjectives, verbs. They're doing a lot of reading stuff. Each week it has some words at the back of the book for them to learn. And they put together a dictionary where they write the word, a short definition, and they draw a picture to go with it. So both of them have been liking this book so far, so hopefully it continues to work. And then for handwriting, we're actually doing something new this year, so I don't know how this is going to go. But we did a reason for handwriting last year. And my daughter enjoyed it, but the kindergarten level is a little different than the first grade level. And my son really did not. And I think it was because, one, it is repetitive because they have to write the same words over and over again, but also it was literally the same format every single week. It was 3 days of write 2 words multiple times, and one day you write a Bible verse. And I think he just got tired of how repetitive it was. So when I heard about this one from, I believe her name is Angie at, it's either School Mama or Homeschool Mama. I can't remember which is her channel name. I'll leave it down below. But when she started talking about this handwriting program, I decided to look into it. And it looks less repetitive than what we used last year, so I'm hoping it works better. But it is the Danielian handwriting, and we have transition to cursive for my son and just the manuscript for my daughter. So the transition one starts out with doing manuscript writing, and then as you get further into the book, it starts switching over to cursive. I was originally planning to start cursive with him when he got to 3rd grade, but he is doing pretty well with his handwriting, and this is the 2nd grade book, so we're just going to try it and see if it works. And then, like I said, the one for my daughter is just manuscript writing because this is for 1st grade. But one of the things that is in here that I really appreciate is it has information in the front on how to teach your kids how to write based on whether they're left or right-handed. One of my kids is right-handed, one is left-handed. I am right-handed, and so is my husband. I appreciate having a book that will help me teach my left-handed child how to write, because I know there's a difference. I just don't know what it is. And that's in both of the books. So I can use that with either child. But then the writing itself, like I said, it's not the exact same thing every day. You know, you'll have that one day where you're writing, you're looking at stuff with letters, and then you're writing words. You'll have one day where you're writing the letters and words, and then the next day it's slightly different. It's different words. It's different. There's just different things to do in here. So it's not literally the same thing, the same format every day, every week. So I'm hoping this works better for my kids. And I've switched to sitting on the floor because I feel less crowded with the books just sitting on the floor, but my foot keeps falling asleep. So the next subject is Bible, and for this one, we're doing a couple different things. One of them is more of the tried and true. One of them is new to us. So the first one, I'm actually just going to hold up the kids' workbook because it's lighter, but it's positive action. Sorry, I'll shift over so you can see. This is the grade 1 curriculum, and it's enjoying God's gifts. So these books go through different stories of the Bible. In this particular case, it's looking at the gifts that God has given people. So we have the creation of the world. We have God rescues Noah. God calls Abraham. God chooses David, so on and so forth. They are set up in chronological order, but this one does not hit all of the major stories of the Bible. It hits very specific ones. But the workbooks come with different pages for them to do each day, or at least 3 of the days. You can do this 3 to 5 days a week. I'm planning to do this 3 days a week because we have another curriculum I'm going to be adding in. So we will be doing all of the worksheets, but we won't be doing a lot of the other extra stuff, which is fine because last year we did the kindergarten curriculum, and I discovered I really like the things they have in the curriculum for the Bible stories, but a lot of the extra stuff didn't really work for us as well. And part of that might just be where my kids are right now, but it just wasn't really working, so we kind of skipped those most of the time. So I think with just doing 3 days a week with this, mostly hitting the Bible story more than anything else, I think this one will work out a lot better this year. And the part I didn't want to hold up, the teacher's guide is this big old binder, and it has all sorts of stuff in it for each week. We try to get to an actual week's worth of stuff. But it lays out how you're going to teach the curriculum each week, what story you're going over, questions to ask, discussions to have, activities to do, different things like that. They have actually updated this because this is, I don't think it says, I think this is the 4th edition. The one we had last year was the 3rd edition, and there's a lot of stuff in here like the discussion boxes and such that were not in the previous edition. So this edition also looks like it's going to work a whole lot better for us than the one we used last year. And like I said, I'm planning to do that one 3 days a week with the kids. The other 2 days, we're going to be working out of More Than Words by Master Books. I got this one a year or 2 ago, thinking it would work for my kids, but after I got here and I looked through it, I realized my kids were not quite ready for this one. So I've held on to it, but it delves into a lot of different things. Like I said, the other curriculum delves into the Bible stories. This one delves more into just things we know from the Bible. So it teaches them about the Trinity. It teaches them about the attributes of God. God is good. God is eternal. God is everywhere. God is beyond understanding. And so this one is designed to be done 4 days a week. So I'm planning to just do 2 days a week, and this will probably take us 2 years to get through, but I'm okay with that because this is technically for, I believe, 1st through 3rd grade. So I'm fine with it taking us a couple years to get through all of it. But it does have a lot of different stuff in here as well. So I feel like it's pretty repetitive week to week. Very similar format. So you start each week with a journal entry from a fictional character. Then you have Bible verses and stuff you're learning. You have writing exercises. There's pictures for them to do, different things like that. So I'm hoping they're at the point where they're old enough to do this one. So hopefully that ends up working out, because I think there's a lot that they can learn from this that they're not going to get from the other curriculum. So the last two core subjects are science and social studies. And science, we're trying something new this year. We've done a couple other science curriculums in the past, but none of them have really worked out for us. However, I bought a new one for this school year, but we did try it out at the end of last year because, like I said, our school year is slightly shorter than the normal 36 weeks that most states have to do. So we were not going to be able to get to all of this curriculum in one school year if we just did the week by week. So the first 4 weeks we actually did at the end of our last school year, so I could try this out, and so we would stand a better chance of actually finishing this by the end of next school year. And so far, I really like the layout of this one. So unfortunately, the only book I have with me is the experiment book, because the teacher's edition is a bunch of hole punch papers that go in a binder, and I was not bringing the binder out. But this is Kindergarten Science Experiments book, but this is by Sunlight. And we're doing the kindergarten science. Angie from Homeschool Mama is also one who uses Sunlight for her curriculum, and she's the main one I've heard talk about this one. But she does recommend going to a lower age level for your kids so you make sure they can do the experiments, they understand what they're learning, and so on. So with my daughter being in first grade, my son in second grade, kindergarten seemed like a really good place to start, because this is supposed to be for ages 5 to 6. So either 5 to 6 or 5 to 7. So this felt like a good frame to work in and not have to worry that the first grade might be too advanced for either one of them. But the one thing that I like about this curriculum is actually a couple things I like about the curriculum. One is that the amount of things that they're learning each week are very manageable. The other curriculums that we have used feels like they're doing the throw the spaghetti at the wall tactic. Throw the spaghetti at the wall and see what sticks, or throw spaghetti at the wall and hope something sticks. They're throwing as much at the kids as they feel like they possibly can, and hoping they retain some of it by the end is really what it feels like. And I don't like throwing that much information at my kids and overwhelming them and feeling like most of it is not going to stick. So this one, we did the ants study. And each day there was a book that came with their curriculum. We would read 2 pages out of the book, and they would have a worksheet where they would answer 2 to 3 questions on what we just read. And the next day we do it again, the next day we do it again, and day 4 we have an experiment to go with what they read. And that was it. And I learned a lot from this. My kids learned a lot from this. And at the end of each week, like on day 3, we would go and review, day 3 or day 4, we would go through and review what they learned on their worksheets on the previous days to try to help them retain it. But it's very manageable pieces of information and things that the kids were more likely to remember. So I really like this approach a whole lot better, and I'm hoping that continues throughout the school year. Social studies is sort of tried and true. I can't say that completely for certain yet, but kind of. So last school year, my goal for social studies for my kids, and when I'm talking social studies, I mean history and geography. My aim with my kids, because they were kindergarten and first grade, is by the end of the year, I wanted them to know the names, at least of most of the states, if not all of them, and to have a general idea of where the states were located. That was my goal. My son nailed that. My daughter did really well. She is younger. I understand that she maybe didn't get quite as far as he did, but they both did really well at learning their states. And the company that we used for learning the states was Knotgrass. However, I did not use their full curriculum for learning the US states. The only thing I got was the activity book, because for each state it had a page with a vocabulary word for them to learn, and a space at the bottom where they could trace a picture that went with that vocabulary word, because they were pretty much all types of like natural landmarks, or I can't think of the word right now, but you know, it might be something like a bay, it might be a geyser or a hot spring or something like that. So different types of things you find in nature for them to learn about. And then on the other page, it would have a picture of the state along with some of the major cities and capital labeled, and pictures that had to do with things the state was known for. And then they would get there would be instructions. And I would go through them, and the kids would, you know, like for Maine, I think there was a picture of a lobster, and it would say, color the lobster red, because a lot of seafood comes from Maine, and lobsters being one of the bigger ones. So it had a lot of that stuff in there where they could learn about the states and learn about things in the states. But I didn't want to overwhelm them with the full curriculum last year. Again, because my daughter was in kindergarten. For my son, that might have been one thing because he was in first grade. But for my daughter, that just felt overwhelming and unnecessary. And I want the kids to mostly learn their subjects together. Some of you might say doing science and social studies in general with my kindergarten was going too far, but it's hard to teach one child, with my kids anyway, it's hard to teach one child and keep the other one entertained in a way that doesn't distract that child. So if they can do their subjects together, they're going to. So like I said, my main goal was just learn your states. Know roughly where they are, know their names. That was the goal. This year I want to go more in depth. So I got their Our 50 States book. And this is a textbook that just has a whole bunch of information on the state itself. There's basically two chapters for every state. Somebody got something on my book. This is brand new. So there's going to be, the first one is the capital and some of the things the state is known for. The second one will have a song that's either the state song or a song that has to do with that state. And then it also has a story about something that happened in that state or a person from that state, and then it has activities at the bottom that you can do during the week. So this one does have reading suggestions in the book. However, I know I'm not doing the first book that's listed in here. I don't know if I'll do any of the books in here or not, because we also have a history curriculum that has reading suggestions, and I'm not doing both. I don't want to overwhelm the kids with that many read alouds and that many stories to keep track of. So one story at a time. But we have the textbook that I will be reading out of, the kids will be learning about, the kids will be answering questions about. We have the lesson review book where it asks questions about each state. And then for grins and giggles, I bought Eat Your Way Through the USA, and my hope is this book lists out each state with usually 3 to 4 food items to fix that fit that state. Usually it's an entree, a side, and a dessert. I think there's at least one state that only has 2 for some reason, and there are a few states that have 4. But usually it's 3 recipes. And what I'm planning to do with the states are going to take us about 3 years to get through again. And yes, you heard me right. I said 3 years. I'm planning to cover each state over 2 weeks, but it'll be 2 days per week. And in the second week, I want to make the food that's listed in here. Now, if I think, like with Maine, where we have a lobster dish, that it's something most of us are not going to necessarily enjoy or want to eat a lot of, I will fix a smaller batch and I will fix something else for our dinner as well. So if anybody doesn't like it or doesn't want to eat much, there's something else to eat. But if it's something that I know we'll eat, I will just make a normal sized meal and we can all eat it together. But I at least want us to try it because it'll give us a chance to try some different foods that we maybe haven't tried before. So like I said, the US states 2 days a week for 2 weeks per state. It should take us about 3 years to get through, roughly. And then the other one that I'm doing is from the same company, but it's their US history curriculum, and that is Our Star Spangled Story. This one is part 1. There's also a book labeled part 2. We will not get to that this year. The history is also probably going to take us about 3 years because I don't remember how many lessons. I think there's 90 lessons in total. Oh, it's 45. Yeah, 90 lessons in total, 45 per part, that's right. But I'm planning to do 1 lesson per week, and we're going to do it for 3 days. The reason why I'm doing that is because my kids are younger, and I know this book technically says for like 1st through 4th grade, I think. But I want to make sure my kids are understanding what we're learning, and it's not just, we learn about this one day, we move on to something else, we move on to something else, and they forget a lot of the early stuff. So I'm going to be doing 3 days a week per lesson so we can get more immersion into what the time period was like, what we're specifically learning about, and all of that. So we won't even finish part 1 this year, but we're at least going to get it started. And this book is very similar to the US States book. It does have some different maps inside it, which I really enjoy. So you can kind of see what it looked like at different times in history. There's more maps at the back of the book too. So like we have the Boston Tea Party. That's the page that I flipped to. So we have a few pages on how all of that worked, why it happened, and then again, a list of activities at the end that they can do. So that's the main book that we're going to be using, but then it also comes with a student workbook. This is like what my kids did for the States last year. We're not doing the States one, but we are doing the history one. I don't feel like making my kids do the States workbook a second time. And then we have a timeline book that just kind of puts the events of history in order. So makes it easier for them to visualize. And then we have a book called Rhythms and Rhymes that has songs in it as well. And so we're going to do some songs from this. We're going to do some songs from the 50 states. And the history book also has a list of books to potentially do as read alouds. And I know the first one in there we're going to do as a read aloud. I don't know from there if we're going to do a 50 states book, if we're going to do another history book. We'll see. I'll figure that out as we go. But that's what we're going to start with. All right, and then for electives. So like I said, last year we did American Sign Language, we did some typing, we did some music. I was kind of trying to go easy on the electives last year. Again, I had a kindergartner, I had a 1st grader. I didn't want to completely overwhelm them. Some of it I want to continue, some of it I'm going to try some new stuff. So the first one we're going to do all year long, just like we did last year, and that is American Sign Language. I took 3 semesters of American Sign Language in college. I am unfortunately very rusty, but I do want to learn more myself. I want my kids to learn it. And so we're going to continue with that for this year. My plan with them in elementary school is to do 1 language for either 2 or 3 years and then move on to another one. So I don't know if this will be our last year of doing American Sign Language in school or if we'll do it next school year as well. After that, I'm pretty sure we're going to move on to Spanish, but we'll see how much longer we do this one. But we are at least going to do it for this next school year. Last year, I pretty much came up with what words I wanted the kids to learn. I came up with the sentences for them to do to try to learn ASL grammar and so on. This year, it's still mostly just me. I tried to find a homeschool curriculum, an elementary age curriculum for ASL. I can't find one. If any of you happen to know of an ASL curriculum that is geared for kids, please let me know, because I would rather have a curriculum put together by an ASL teacher, especially if it's a deaf teacher. I would love if there was a deaf teacher my kids could learn from, but unfortunately, they just get me. But if there is an ASL curriculum out there, I would love to know, because everything I found seemed to just be for adults. And it was more like, here's videos you can watch and maybe a little bit of how to test yourself, but not a full immersive curriculum where it's like, here's lesson 1, lesson 2, lesson 3, and so on. So I'm doing what I can for this, teaching the kids based on what I know, what I'm still learning, and so on. But one of the books that I got is 101 Easy Signs for Nonverbal Communication, American Sign Language for Kids. Now, one of the big things that I learned when learning ASL in college is if you're going to learn ASL, you need to learn from a person or from videos. Do not learn from pictures. My ASL teacher did a very good illustration of this when she showed someone the picture in my very first ASL class. And it was the sign for feel. And she said, based on the picture, how do you sign that? And the way he signed it, she said, nope, that's the sign for heart attack. So don't try to learn from pictures. Learn from videos. Learn from watching people do it. But learn from people who are credible too, which I know can be hard to know. But this is going to go into a lot of the stuff that we learned last year. But I'm really hoping that by using this, it will help me organize what we're going to learn, how we're going to learn it, and all of that a little better. So I got this more as a way of trying to structure how I'm going to organize what we're learning and how we're learning it throughout the school year is kind of my main purpose with that. And then I also found some activity books because kids tend to do better with activity books. And so I picked up this one. This one is American Sign Language, specifically fall activity book. There is also one, I don't think there's one for winter. I think there's just one for Christmas. And then there's one for spring and one for summer. So we'll at least do the Christmas and the spring one. I might get the summer one for them to do next summer, but I'm hoping this will get them just a little bit extra practice. If nothing else, like you can see kind of the picture over here, where they have the person finger spelling the months and the kids have to either trace the letters. Okay, in this one they trace the letters, but then there's some of them where they have to figure out which letter is missing as well, just based on finger spelling. So I'm hoping this adds a little bit more to what they're learning, and hopefully I can have a little bit more structure in what we're learning, or get some ideas of things to teach that maybe I just don't think about, because I guarantee there are gaps in what they learned last year, because I was trying to come up with all the things to learn, and even I got overwhelmed by how much I would need to teach them. So I did the best I could, but I'm sure there are things that I missed. And then the other 2 electives we have are sort of going to be divided up into trimesters. So one of them is art, and we are going to be doing something art related each trimester, but it's going to be a different type of art. So I'm just going to discuss the first trimester because I have ideas for the second and third trimesters, but I could change my mind, so I won't go into them here. But for the first trimester for art, I got teaching art in the primary grades, sailing through 1, 2, 3 grades. So my kids haven't done art study at all. We've done coloring, we've done drawing, freehand drawing and stuff on our own, but not taught as how to draw pictures as more of an art study. And so I found this book, and it does divide up what they're learning by first, second, and third grade. So my hope in the first trimester is to get through the first grade art in this so they can start learning more of the techniques of drawing. And then next year we can do the second grade. The year after that we can do the third grade. Yes, it's technically behind for my son because he's in second grade, but since we haven't learned any of this at all yet, I think it'll be fine for him as well. And some of the things it teaches in here, make sure I don't pass up the first grade section. They're learning things like drawing, I think they're drawing pictures of themselves or creating portfolios. There's tearing skills, color and paint, doing things with lines, doing shapes, circles, triangles, learning about how to use colors, so on and so forth. There's a lot of different things in here. I got this book on Amazon, so I'll leave it linked down in the description if you want to look into it further. But I'm hoping that this just kind of helps get us into a basic idea of, for me, teaching art, and for the kids learning how to do art that we haven't gotten yet. And then the third elective feels like a little bit of this and a little bit of that. But my son really likes typing, and my daughter's starting to get into it as well. So I got a typing program for them, and we'll be doing that probably in the second trimester. The third trimester, I'm probably going to do music. I don't know exactly what with music. Is it going to be learning to play an instrument? Is it going to be learning about composers and music? Is it going to be both? I don't know. I'll figure that out as we get later in the school year. But I do have some different ideas when it comes to it. It's just a matter of what I want to do by the time we get there. However, for the first trimester, we're going to be doing poetry. We have not done much with poetry yet, other than like nursery rhymes. So I want to start doing some poetry with the kids. This will probably be 1 day a week, 2 at the absolute most, but I want to do some children's poetry. I want to do some, I guess, classic poetry or adult poetry, like Robert Frost and things like that, but just do some of the shorter ones and start introducing the kids to how poetry works, looking for the rhymes in poems and different things like that. So that's probably what we're going to be doing in the first trimester for that elective. Like I said, poetry, typing, and music, that sounds like a very odd assortment, but these are things that I want to cover this year. And I discovered last year that my kids lasted about a trimester with typing before they started going, yeah, we're not interested anymore. So I'm figuring a trimester of doing it as part of school, and then we can move on to something else. They can still do typing on their own, but it won't be part of the curriculum necessarily. All right, so that is all I have for you guys for today. Like I said, this is a little bit different video, and I don't plan to make a lot of homeschool videos, just 2, maybe 3 a year. But I do want to talk about it because homeschooling is a big part of our life, and I like to see what other people are doing for homeschool. I like talking about homeschool. So I at least want to make a video here and there where I can connect with the other homeschoolers on BookTube. So I hope you enjoyed this video. If you have used any of this curriculum, let me know what you thought of it down in the comments below. And if you liked or didn't like it, let me know specifically what it was about it that you liked or didn't like. And if you do want to suggest any particular curriculums, feel free to do that as well. I can at least check them out. I may change to them, I may not, but I can at least check them out. As always, I hope you're having a wonderful day, and I'll see you later.